I'm davetrippin. This is the Interstice Podcast. Oh, what a week it's been. What it's been. Pretty wild, to say the least. And in fact, that is the whole topic of conversation that I'm going to go into here on the podcast. But first, thanks for tuning in, whether that's on Spotify, iTunes. Really appreciate it. The channel, of course. Big shout out to my patrons. I really appreciate that. And if you've not already, if you would consider supporting me on Patreon, I really appreciate it. So the rundown is we'll discuss for the first half, and then in the second, I'll turn it over to the emails that I've been sent. And if you want to get your question answered here, write to me at davetrippin@gmail.com. And it's very likely that your question will come up in the podcast, if not turned wholly into a video like the most recent on my channel had been. So what to talk about today? Well, as I've been oft to discuss recently, I've started work at a new private school, and with that has come an incredible amount of responsibility and change. And for the most part, I kind of went in with this eyes wide open. I knew what was going to be asked of me there or expected of me. And it was going to be this trade-off. There's these really cool things happening. For example, this year, probably the greatest gift I received the mentorship of the first year. So this is junior high school. So these kids probably be about 13. I received mentorship of the first year advanced class. Now, I think even for advanced, that these kids are advanced. You get kids who are of a higher level, and they have this particular kind of class for each different age group. But these kids are ridiculous. I think two of them have certainly lived abroad. And it would not surprise me if the others had, but I'm not sure where specifically they had. So it's really cool. But on the flip side of that has been the incredible amount of overtime, which is self-inflicted. Maybe I could be getting out of there a bit sooner, but it would be causing me crazy stress. Because another thing that I committed to, or had in my mind sorted out anyways, is I'm never going to do this overtime for face. I'm never going to sit in an office if the sole purpose of that is to simply show that I am present. That's so sickening to me. It's so wrong. So if I am going to be there, it's to work on something. That being said, I've had a lot to do and a lot of new responsibilities that have required me to be there. Last night, I was there until 7:30. The night prior to that, I was there until 8:30, and this is starting my day at 8:30. So 8:30 to 8:30. I knew that that's what I was in for when I got into this, so it's fine, but it's intense. And when you're staying on top of things, I guess what I had was the no good, very bad week or day or so, where to begin with, I was doing fine. And because I've been so proactive, staying on top of things, I think it would be no act of ego to say that I was definitely, or have been, developing a reputation there that's quite positive. But oh man, just the last couple of days, I've recovered from this. The ship is righted, but I'll take you on a journey of my misery and the sort of things that happened to me and what I kind of self-inflicted screwed up when I was there. So regularly, there are a lot of private schools. When I was growing up, I went to a private school that had Saturday every single weekend. And that was because it was a boarding school. So if you're going to be there 7 days a week, you're probably going to have school on Saturday. But in addition to that, you will also live there on Sunday. So, okay, you're already there Saturday, you're there Sunday. This isn't a boarding school, but they still do the Saturday thing. And the way that they balance this for the teachers is they split this up into what they call an A week and a B week. So depending on what your schedule is, if you're an A week teacher or if you're a B week teacher, then you're going to be there for that weekend for that Saturday if it's your week. So if it's an A week and you're an A week teacher, you work on the Saturday. If you're a B week teacher and it's a B week, then you you work on that Saturday. And so when it is not the letter assigned to use week, then you don't have to go in. But with my Sharona being such an issue right now, and they were slowly introducing the kids back into school, they had this partitioning of the kids' attendance where they were coming back. They were starting to return, but they weren't coming back in full. So it would only be a portion of them that were in. And what this created was an anomaly in the schedule where usually you would be away, except there was an exception where each teacher also belongs to a grade group. I, for example, belong to the second grade group, and all of their extracurricular duties I am in a pool of. And these duties are shared, whether it's like saying farewell to the kids at the end of the school, taking their temperature in the morning, like with one of these temperature guns, like a whole array of things that you can do. And if it was a particular day where your form duties were to go on at the school, and these form duties were special for this My Sharona time, then regardless of it being an A week or a B week Saturday, you should be at the school. And I just got it in my head that it was my weekend off. And it was actually recently, if anybody went to the live stream recently, it was that weekend. And so I'd planned the live stream for, for Saturday. And I got up early in the morning and I was getting ready to start the live stream. And I get this call from my work and they're like, Dave, you should be at school right now. And I was like, what? And so that's incredibly embarrassing because I was like, well, it's a B week though, and my B week's off. And they were like, yeah, it would normally be, except we have these exceptions right now because the adapted schedule that your grade group is also in on this day, which meant that I worked a bunch of Saturdays. I'm fine to do the work. Me staying at 7:30 into 8:30 last night, I could have been gone earlier on those days, but I'm throwing myself on the sword willfully this time. It's what I want to do for the time that I spend here. And so there was just, it was sometimes, you know what it feels like? It feels sort of fated. I look at that. I've talked about that actually in the podcast before. When I think about kids' behavior, I mean, let alone get into a greater conversation of like free will generally. But when you look at kids, you really see this idea distilled down, crystallized, reduced to its core, where you just see that they have such a limited scope of experience and knowledge that there are certain ways in which they will behave, which they're sort of doomed to. But the thing is, you think that you escape from this as an adult and like you're a discerning consciousness and you won't have anything like that happen to you. But because I was learning the ropes at the school, I didn't yet understand that distinction. And also, this is not normally how the school would be run. I would usually have that time off. And so it was incredibly embarrassing. And when it's incredibly, this is another thing you can learn, is that like a reputation is so incredibly fragile. And so all this rapport that I've built up, when you go missing days of work, that doesn't look too cool. So I'm super, super embarrassed by that. When I was trying to, dot my I's and cross my T's. So that just adds this stress where that'll get your head on the chopping block. I mean, what more is a fireable offense than you don't show up to work on a day that you're supposed to report in to do so? So that just spikes my stress like you wouldn't believe. And it was another opportunity. This is something I've reflected on as well, where like I'm always thinking about how I could be more mature, how in the face of all that I've experienced, knowing how things move cyclically, knowing that I will return to a place again where I'm really stressed. Now, remembering your lifetime of experience that you have now, how are you going to behave when you get back into one of these very high stressful situations? Have you learned anything? Are you adapting your behavior, or are you cooler under pressure? Are you calmer? And I've had so many opportunities to be better recently. And I wish I could report in a greater success because these were getting to me. It was kind of breaking me down. That one was like a sort of, okay, just like ride with it, get it fixed. But then that led to the next of my no good, no fun, very bad couple of days, which I was going to talk about here. So now that I've made this mistake regarding the form duties, form referring to my grade, that I thought, okay, you got to like pay attention. You don't want to alienate these people. You don't want to become an outsider when there's so many things that you need to get done and so many questions that you have, that if you lose someone's help as a resource, you're really starting to diminish your ability to swim as opposed to sink, in that old adage, sink or swim. So it really matters that I have a good relationship with them. And for your own viability, for your own mental stability, the sort of relationships that you have at a workplace really do make the difference of dreading getting up in the morning or enjoying getting up in the morning. And this put that at risk. So I thought, okay, you got to stay on top of this, Dave. Don't screw this up. Pay special attention to the form duties, the grade duties that you have. And so I was looking this sheet over and I was like, okay, it was another Saturday that I had to go in that was special. And so it was the next Saturday. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to screw up anything. I'm going to go in this Saturday and I'm going to do everything that they ask of me. And so one of the things that they'd asked of me was, you need to be in the gym at this time because all the kids are coming in and they get their height and their weight taken as kind of like a school health thing. I was like, okay, I suppose that's interesting for me culturally. I kind of like reserve judgment on that, where I don't think I've ever seen that a school in Canada would record your weight, especially. But that I really do feel like a cultural outsider, because I don't like, my knee-jerk reaction is to feel like that's invasive, but well, I don't totally understand the situation, and I think my perspective may fail me there, where I would reserve judgment until I had a better sense of like, why does a school do that as opposed to like your family doctor? But anyway, so I'm going in to record these kids' weight and their height. And about halfway through, I get this teacher run up to me and she's like, Sensei, you're supposed to be in class right now. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I've obsessed so much over my grade schedule that I was like, there's no way. And I go and I look, and I thought I had no classes on this day, only duties to perform with my grade. Nope. I've got my grade that it's only an hour, and it's with these advanced kids that I've been talking about. I hate letting anybody down, but I especially hate that I would let this class down. I spend so much time with them. I have such an impact on them. And so what happens then is I'm running and I have to do these lessons. This is another crazy thing around the My Sharona time here, is that these lessons, even though I'm at the school, those kids aren't yet in at the school. And so I have to go and do that in a Zoom classroom, but I'm doing the Zoom from the school. So I'm like teaching them they're still at home. And just the cart, the wheels gone off the cart at this point. So I'm like, okay, I didn't realize that. And because it hasn't gone back to full schedule at the school, when you go, I'm telling all this story, basically, maybe I'll interject here before the end to just let you know, it's okay to have bad days. And it's okay if you don't handle them so well, because the amount of stress that I felt, the amount, like my eye was like twitching by the end of this, just crushed under mountains of stress and not handling it well. But here I am speaking to you now, and things are a little better and I have recovered. So that's more the moral of the story, but I don't want to put you through like the Black Mirror bleakness of this before knowing that by the end, unless you're simply entertained by my suffering, in which case, let's continue. So I get into the school, and then because it's this special schedule, you have to book rooms. And so I hadn't booked a room thinking that I would need this. And I was like, I'll just go to my room. That's where I would go. But when I go to my room, somebody else has booked it for this period of time. So why would this matter that much? Well, that room has my computer in it, and my computer has all of my accounts already signed in. And where I wrote these down somewhere to begin with, once I'd kind of gotten in the rhythm of things, I'm not thinking about the next time that I'm going to have to sign in. So when I asked a friend at the school, I said, do you mind if I use your room? I then go up to his and I try and sign in. and I can't sign in on anything. And I actually got locked out of my account because I put it in too many times and it wasn't sending a renewal email to give me a new password to the accounts that I'd registered with it. It was a mystery what was going on. So finally then I had another teacher kind enough, basically my boss. He was like, we'll somehow contact the kids, which is difficult apparently, and we'll tell them to go into my virtual classroom and you can go there. So we did this and I got the kids in, but I mean, it's a tiny class of these advanced kids. There's 6 of them. And I think I ended up managing to recover 3 of them. And when I was before I even got into the classroom, I had like the head of the English department, like he was very calm to his credit. But then we had another one of the, like, I think the guy who's even above him was just like, he was in the room too, looking quite perturbed about what was going on. And I was trying to explain to him how I'd screwed up, come by this honestly. I mean, this is the thing though, with the first one, where it was my eyes like twitching now, actually just recounting this, it was so stressful. With the situation regarding the first like A week, B week, how could I have known whether to be in or not? Well, that's a little bit more forgivable because this has never happened before in the history of the school. Nobody told me especially that, even though it's supposed to be your day off, you still come in. But this is totally unforgivable. This is me just not looking at my schedule, over obsessing about another schedule that I have, and blatantly missing a class. So you can imagine where, like I say, I was so excited to have built this rapport over the time that I'd spent there so far, and I'm watching it just immolate, like just go up so fast in flames. And what's noteworthy among this, like I say, is that I'm not handling it well. This is not with great equanimity that I am able to deal. An evenness of temperament I did not have. But then I have my kind of, like I'm saying, I have my sort of closing reflection on it, is that it did get to the end of it. I was not fired. To the credit of my boss, and I've said so far, if you're listening to the podcast, he's a good dude. I think he has a good heart. He was calm. It was like, I've seen some horrible management in my day. Like, just absolutely horrible management. And this is not that, where I think horrible management could be either A, horrible communication and zero feedback. And also I'd say another like staple of horrendous management is needless escalation. So it's like these managers who want to like twist the blade when you're suffering or you're under some heavy amount of stress. And in this position, it was kind of the antithesis of that. Both the English department guy was just like stone cold. Okay, this is what we'll do. I got the lesson rescheduled. And my boss basically said, it was like, calm down, reschedule the lesson, move on. I was like, oh, so glad that that's the response to it. I don't need to lose my job, which I'm very dependent on in the interim here as I develop things on the channel. Suddenly after only, however, X number of months of being there. So I don't know if I would necessarily call it a silver lining, but it was this kind of cool thing. I'm often reminded of the fact, until you do something utterly irreparable, how even if you fail, like in the sort of effort I had to, okay, you're stressing, deal with that stress in a more mature way. Even if you fail, this day will pass, another day will come, and then another and another. And once you get some distance between you and that thing, then you will recover. And of course, it's especially effective if in that time you're returning to your more positive habits. So you're building that rapport again. Like it really is. I don't think all is lost until all is lost, basically. And clearly I hadn't lost it all with missing a day of work and then missing classes. It wasn't enough to break the camel's back, thank God. And since then, I've been putting in crazy hours and like laser focused on making sure that I don't let things get away from me. And as well, I think also I'm growing more used to what it is I actually need to do. For example, when I'm first looking at each one of these duties that are associated with the grade that I have to do these duties for, I'm first translating them. I'm then working out the details of them. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. It's all first time. And so where some of that greenhorn is fading from me now, and I'm like, oh, that's this duty and that's this duty. And when you do that, this starts at X time and ends at Y time. And that kind of thing is sinking in for me now that I am feeling more comfortable. Now, I've only been there since, let's see, I suppose the start of it would have been April, and some of that has been the Sharona mayhem. So it's been quite flaky, and everything has been a day-to-day change, which is to be expected, but settling somewhat, which is really, really, really good. I mean, broke my heart. Like I could tell, like the head of my my grade, this guy was, I think he just, he didn't even understand, like he didn't think as he spoke for the impact that this question would have, but where I was kind of like just getting back together with everything. He didn't even say it maliciously, but I was kind of sorting my life out again after making these errors. And he was like, so have you worked at a school before? And I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, oh, 7 years. That's all. That's all the time I've spent. Now, in my defense, but it's not a defense I even want to make, have I worked in a school that required me to do all these extra duties? No, never. I've never had that responsibility before. And I would say even like, I know that there were extra responsibilities that were to be done by the teachers at the schools that I've worked at prior to this, but I swear, I'm like, I think you guys might have a few more duties than even like a regular public school teacher would have in the Japanese public school environment. So, I mean, this really is only a position like if you really want to do this, or that wasn't the way to say it. It would be you really got to want to do this if you're going to do this. And I very much did. I want that experience. I wanted to know what it is like. You got to have at least, if you're going to live in Japan, this like high, super intensity work life. You actually don't have to, but it was something. I'm an experience junkie, so this was something that I wanted to know what it was like, and it's been one hell of a ride. I will say that, and perhaps to not like do this dark side, sunny side thing, but like I'm talking about at the beginning too, there is a measurable payoff for all the increased input, all the increased exertion, work effort that you have to make. Like one thing that I'll talk about now, because I'm actually getting real experience with it, is to have the class be utterly your own, to be a licensed teacher where you don't have this assistant who has way too much power in some sense. So like if you get an assistant at the schools that I worked at before, it's this like horrible double issue that you have. Like usually they're not that good at English in the first place. So especially in the elementary schools, and B, the kids look to them for their cues. So not only do you have like a diminished sort of, I wouldn't call it disciplinary. I'd straight up call it like influence on the class. But then that could totally be distorted by this person's inability or disinterest in English. Or the class itself. Let's just call it, the class. We don't need to focus on the subject so much necessarily. But now that I'm here and I'm teaching classes totally by myself, you'd think maybe that would actually be like more strenuous. That's the word I want to use. It would be more strenuous, but it's not. I actually find when it's just me in the class, I find that way more relaxing. It's been really, really good. And I think I've almost taught with every single group of kids that I will have. And I also, I taught at, my school was legendary. I don't know if I've ever talked about this actually, but my school in the district that I worked in before was legendary for its behavioral issues, just year after year. And this was elementary school, and it was infamous for behavioral issues. Actually, I have talked about it before. Like kids telling me to my face, they're like, this is hell. And like, I hate this. I hate you. Like, my God, you're so complicated and sad. You're 12. Come on, give yourself a little more time before you become so distraught and what would you be, disillusioned? Like, you believe me, kid, you have no idea what's coming. But having dealt with that, it really was useful, because now when I came into this situation, I mean, so sure, I've had a few low energy classes, but whatever. I mean, give me low energy any day of the week over really, really sad, angry kids. Like, I did. I mean, it was a kind of victory. I mean, I suppose now I'm going on a bit of a tangent. I did eventually get through to those kids, which was gently. You'd think like the knee-jerk reaction might be like, oh, you got to like ratchet up that discipline and be more intense. But without being harmless, showing them that I wasn't at odds with them did something very good in those classes that were so difficult at the previous school that I worked at. It was a very nuanced kind of behavior that you had to have with them, because if you show weakness, kids will eat you alive. There is a place for showing them that you're still serious. But yeah, it was a very, very complicated thing. I've had to sort of develop my own very like intuitive style surrounding, I guess you would call it discipline. Like, I am disciplining, but it would be really unorthodox. It'd be like, it's a sort of like, what is it? Wu wei, like, just no resistance kind of thing. But it's this weird, you can't be weak about it. I've developed this approach eventually where I will be so confident in what it is that I'm doing that it will carry along anyone else who even has an inkling of interest in the class. And if you are going to run counter to that, I won't stop you, but by me being confident enough and navigating the class clearly enough, you'll know that what you're doing is wrong. And usually I'd found once that clicks, if you can kind of create that understanding, then the kids finally like that. The thing that I didn't want to do eventually, I mean, I got, for a while I was getting angry with the kids and stuff, but it was not conducive to progress. It made the room antsy. When you get angry, how do you return to like, hey, we're having fun and we're learning? Like it is the antithesis, the anathema or whatever it is of learning when people feel sad or angry or nervous. So yeah, I kind of developed that sort of thing, but it was impactful enough that those kids, when they really weren't into it, when they were still totally resistant, they would mostly, what they began to do is just get quiet. They knew they were like, I think where their respect for me may have developed, they were like, all right, he's not trying to make me miserable, where I feel like they had that impression, like, they're only like, he's only angry because he's a bad guy. Like they can't see that I'm angry because, well, reason A, B, C, and D. They just think that you're angry because, but when they see you not getting angry at them and simply carrying forward, they can at least respect that, you know what, I'm not into this content, but I can respect he's got to do his thing. So I'll just shut up. And then even some of them came around. I don't like particularly, I think I mentioned this before, like there was a girl who called it hell. And by the end of my time with her, she would like speak to me and ask me questions and was curious. It was a very, very strange couple years. I was at my last school for 3 years. And one of the years was like, hey, this is kind of whatever. And then the last 2 that I was there, I was just like, whoa, man, these kids. Oh, man. But we're not turning the whole podcast into this kind of reflection back on that. We're more talking about what's going on now. And I'm loving, with my sense of development, I'm much, much, much more prepared for these classes alone. They don't faze me for a second. Being up in front of the kids isn't something that I find intimidating in the slightest. And I actually really do have a lot of fun with it. Another benefit would be the fact that these classes are way smaller. And so I can actually know the kids. I can get to know their names. I'm like already, I got my book in front of me. I do the class attendance at the beginning of the thing. But I'm with a lot of them, I'm already kind of branching out like, okay, so you are you and you are you and you are you. And that's really cool. I mean, there's a lot of them still coming in unprepared and stuff. Like there was one guy today I could tell you're like the cool kid, not into English, that kind of thing. But even his vibe, I was like, English probably sucks for you, right? We have our subjective experience. You probably suck at it. So you think it sucks. You live in Japan. You don't care. Like these things that I can totally empathize with. I understand why this isn't your thing, man. But when I approached him, kind of like the people would be doing an activity and he'd just kind of be sitting there, or he'd be like actively talking to his friend. If I came over, I never got attitude from him. It was more like, okay, well, what are you going to say to me? All right, that's fine. Okay. And that is what I'm trying to cultivate. I wouldn't even say that's all I ask. That's what I'm like. I demand basic respect. Like that's the thing. But the way that I come about doing that, like I described, is a really sort of like unorthodox. You got to like confidence man the thing to make it work for you, as opposed to pressure them with antagonistic behavior. And maybe not for everybody, but man, that works pretty well. And it was getting through. I could see like I've got these classes and there are these challenging kids, but it was getting through here and with way less resistance than I would have found at my previous school. So there are these silver linings. Teaching alone, awesome. Having the smaller classes, very, very cool. Being in a school that can afford air conditioning, oh my God. I didn't even have a classroom before. I worked in a library, and the library had no air conditioning. And so I would get 3 or 4 fans in there pushing around hot air. I have an air conditioner here. The bonuses of a private school. Like it's awesome. And this is another cool thing too. Like as long as you're doing your shit, nobody's riding you. If you weren't, they would. But if you are, then it's fine. And I love it. Like I do my classes, and once I'm done, yeah, they're busy. I had to do all this prep and everything. But then all the kids get out of the class. One of my cool things, being me, I've got my Ooey Boom. I think it's a Bose Ooey Boom, one of these like Bluetooth speakers. All the kids, when they come in at the beginning of each class, I have like today's goals, write down the homework that you're going to have to do at the end. And while they're doing that, I was into lo-fi, hip-hop, chill cow before this thing blew up. And I have a projector in the room, so we do the study girl on the screen. We play the lo-fi hip-hop, and the kids get to take down their notes, and it's a super chill environment. I think these moments of music in a class, I think they're a great idea. Why wouldn't you do that? If I was in a class and I was in a moment where I had to write notes and it was like the appropriate music to the mood of my studying, that would be awesome. So that's something else I've incorporated in. And then once all my classes are done for the day, I clean the classroom and I put on some music. I've been listening to a lot of Charlie Cunningham, and that's super, super chill. So we will now jump into our questions. So I got Sanath. We finally got to your email here. Sanath wrote me and he says, hope you're doing well. So I don't know whether this is an unpopular opinion or not, but when I come to Japan, apart from my usual teaching and work, I would really like to indulge in the Japanese culture. It's what a lot of people want to do. This is not unpopular. This is the popular opinion. Participate in local festivals, make meaningful relationships. Now I know the absolute requirement for this is the language. It's not an absolute requirement at all. It's incredible how much intention creates communication. So if your intention is pure, if you're a kind person, then you can communicate with very little. So like language in terms of like a, say, conversational level of Japanese, you wouldn't need that. Of course, it enriches it to another level, but it's not this like make or break kind of thing that people might think that it is. I have heard that many of the rural towns have their own festivals, etc. They do. I want to know, in this exact case, how do I go about wanting to do the things I mentioned above? So basically, a good way to get involved on these, like, if you want to do this sort of like town stuff, is usually towns will have an international center. Like, that's how I was getting my, 500 yen Japanese lessons from one of my teachers. I was taking 2 lessons before I moved here, and it was at their international center. And if you participate in an international center, probably you'll be able to take some Japanese lessons. But in addition to that, you're going to find out about all sorts of like cultural events, and they love when foreigners become involved in these cultural events. Like, that's why they have the International Center, and they want to be known for their sort of like international integration and interaction with other cultures, because it's also an exportation of the Japanese culture. So like, you bring that back wherever it is that you go. So like, there it is in the name. I would say international centers are a great way to go, both for Japanese lessons and getting out there into the community, if you so desire, because there's always festivals. Like my buddy Graham, he and I did a really cool, was it Kichijoji? No, Shimokitazawa vid years ago now. I got to get back out there now that things are, chilling out a bit, do these more adventuresome videos. I'm looking forward to it. He would often, I got him into the lesson there, where I was like, hey, come along. And he said, okay, I'll come. And now he loves it, loves going to the lesson. And they've invited him to a bunch of stuff where I was busy before, I couldn't do it. But he was loving doing it. He was doing it all the time, going to these different events that they had. All right, next one comes up. This is from Mr. Holder. I discovered your YouTube channel about a week ago. And your insight in the Japanese school system helped a lot in developing my career path. Cool. I would love to move to Japan and teach English in an elementary school, preferably as a career, maybe moving up if it doesn't seem to fit me. Oh, you mean maybe from that school. I am a week away from graduating high school. Well, congratulations. That's pretty wild. I'm glad to hit that demographic, the younger people interested in this kind of stuff. That's cool. I know you can get any sort of BA as long as you have some... What? I would like to know what you recommend majoring in. Okay, this is a time-honored question. I know you can get any sort of BA as long as you have some teaching certifications, but like I said earlier, I'd love to make this a long-term career with a livable wage. I would be moving to Japan around 2026. Wild. That's cool. The future. So would you say English teaching market would be oversaturated? I'd love that you would think I would be able to have an authoritative opinion on that. I don't know, like, let's say that hard and fast. I don't know what the earth will still be here in 2026. But hey, for argument's sake, do I think it'd be oversaturated within the next 6 years? No, I think the landscape will change, obviously. But no, there's still going to be English teachers bringing their knowledge to Japan by 2026. No problem with that. As far as I've seen, maybe to add to that, to give a bit more, where I joke about saying I wouldn't know for certain, I don't. But if I could speak to a trajectory of things, foreign teachers seem to be increasingly integrated into Japan. There isn't less, they're becoming more. Situations like myself, or teachers like at the previous board of education I worked at, who were there working as direct hires, but contractual direct hires that are then moving from contractual direct hire positions into like full full members of staff positions for like the board of education. Bumping my camera. So yeah, it's evolving, but in a way that I think would see you still finding employment even 6 years down the road. No problem. No problem. Okay, this is from Dixon. Nice. And I love it when people mention to me where it is that they're from. Hi, my name is Chris. I'm from the hills of Eastern Kentucky. Cool. I'm studying information technology and working on my bachelor's degree. The great thing about IT work is it's highly flexible for the work you can do. How true that is. I'm not sure where to specifically take my IT career, but I like cybersecurity, system admin. Last year around July, I went to Tokyo, and it was overwhelming, considering I'd never been to a city bigger than Lexington. Not sure how big Lexington is, but I'd imagine it's quite small. I think I found myself to be more outgoing when I was presented with this challenge of navigating a foreign city that was several times larger than anywhere I'd ever been. It's true. You either shrink or grow to the occasion. And I felt that it's so funny to me, like Vancouver, awesome city, but it's like a little local hamlet when you compare it to something like Tokyo. And that's awesome. It's cool being like, wow, the incredible artifice of the human society that we are a part of, what they have made. It's incredible. It gave me confidence to step out of my comfort zone at the time of my life, and I'd like to visit again. I'm a little bit tired, you can tell. I'm out of breath. These late days, I'm hitting the gym consistently too. Whew. First question, how many items did you bring when you moved to Japan? I understand space is sparse, but anything to just remind you of home or some item of sentimental value. So I didn't bring anything aside from a laptop, which has since retired. I've got this one, and now I've got the third computer I've had since I've been here. And then my Gibson SG, because that was my baby I played guitar seriously probably from 2004 to 2010. I played for about 6 years really intensely, and it's just a part of myself. I could still pick that up and do some stuff on it now. That's with me like never playing anymore. That's how ingrained the practice is that I had. So I went super minimal, but that's kind of me personally. Generally, like when I moved to this house, I got rid of so much stuff. I do it every single time. I really feel like I'm like an anti-hoarder. I don't think I'm quite I would not describe myself as a minimalist, but it kind of ends up being that way. Like I'm so of the mind, I barely think of ourselves, or I barely think of myself as like an I. I'm down that kind of rabbit hole with thinking. And I think when you get really, really trapped in thinking that you are one way, or like I'm this person and this is who I am, then that could be healthy in one sense. You're like, I have a moral code, or whatever the hell you tell yourself. But when you experience trauma, when you experience real difficult challenges in your life, I think sometimes that core of your being is something that can be useful, but at the same time, it's something that holds you back, because whatever you were at that time is so connected to the trauma that you experienced that if you hold on to that self, then you hold on to the trauma just as much. And so I've always been to this mind. I'm like, always be clearing yourself out. Always be accepting the next manifestation of yourself, minute to minute, moment to moment, day to day. Like that you really are, today, like that. Everybody knows this. I don't need to, welcome to like high school philosophy here. The self that you are today is not the self that you were yesterday. And the more willing you are to let go of those things, the more you kind of allow that natural process to occur. I mean, it's best described in that we are a process. It is an illusion that gives us this idea of an immutable self. We could be nothing farther from that. Interesting, though, that people will meet you after however many years and they would still say, man, you just haven't changed a bit. So interesting. Second question, what was going through your mind in the months before you made your decision leading up to actually leaving your home for a foreign place? For me, it was, I'm doing something that matters. And for me to continue, that's what I've always been in search of. I need reason. I need a purpose. And that can be anything. Anybody can have that through any way. But for me, it was that, because I was butting my head against so many glass ceilings. Some I feel I could overcome now where I back in Canada, because I like understand upwards mobility, the way that you could navigate it now with like self-education, with IT, all these things. But at that time, these things weren't apparent to me. And so I was like, Dave, how do you progress? How do you find something that creates purpose, meaning, and growth? Boom, this is the thing that you can do. This was a dream that you always kind of kicked around. Now you can take it seriously. And there was great relief and incredible excitement. And everyone was so proud of me, because it was a brave thing to do, like going to live in another foreign country, to be out of your depth, to try something you've never done before. That could be anything, right? Anything that you've never done before, that is in an alien place, is a challenge and respectable. And so it was really cool. Before I'm coming over, was a really, really good headspace time for me. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that I don't have an option but leave my hometown. I have a little more than one more year. So maybe you're saying you have no option but to leave. If I had the opportunity to go to Japan, I might pack up and leave. Might as well make it an adventure. If I'm leaving, I understand teaching English would be a job to get myself in the country, and I think I'll enjoy it because I love kids and people. Third, how difficult do you think transitioning from an English teacher job to other occupations within say something like a JLPT N2, just a high level of Japanese? I don't think it would be that difficult at all with an N2. You can move into international coordinators at universities. You get the IT thing is a massive option for you. I've talked about presiding over weapons. You can go like the priest route, make great money, have tons of time off. Yeah, so you do very well. I think you can transition out of it. Lastly, what books in general do you recommend? Okay, let's go with something that can offer, I would say, like reasoned optimism in a time right now that's like, there's a lot that's going on that's difficult. I would say it's by Steven Pinker. It's called Enlightenment Now. And I would say for your own personal goals, I would recommend the book The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I think that's his name, but The Infinite Game is the name of the book. If you want fiction, City of Illusions by Ursula K. Le Guin, or The Left Hand of Darkness. All right, guys, it was a lot of fun making this today, burnt out as I am, but the mission continues. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please do drop a like if you're on the channel. Consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification to be let known whenever a video goes live on the channel. If you want to get your questions answered, please do write in to davetrippin@gmail.com. And as well, if you would, please consider supporting me on Patreon, because it means the world to me and I really appreciate it. But for now, the clock has run out, and I'll catch you in the next one.